Her clothes were clean but worn, patches visible even from across the cafeteria. Aaliyah Jefferson moved through Lincoln High like a ghost, noticed only when someone needed a target. Brent Wilson, with his perfect hair and designer clothes, found her first. "Check out Salvation Army's newest model," he announced, phone recording her oversized shirt and faded jeans. Students laughed. Teachers looked away. But in the quiet of her grandfather's boxing gym that evening, Aaliyah stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror, half her face calm, half burning with something dangerous. What Brent couldn't see when he mocked her hand-me-downs was the disciplined fighter beneath them, a girl who'd once been undefeated until she'd sworn off fighting forever. As his bullying escalated to target her little sister Kyla, Aaliyah made a decision. She wouldn't run anymore. 3 generations of fighters ran through her blood, and Brent Wilson was about to learn exactly what that meant. Just before we get back to it, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if you're enjoying these stories, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow's special episode is one you definitely don't want to miss. The morning sun cast long shadows across the cracked sidewalks of East Riverdale as Aaliyah Jefferson made her way to school. She moved with purpose, her back straight despite the weight of her worn backpack. Her clothes, clean but visibly oversized, hung from her slender frame. A white button-up shirt with a carefully mended tear near the collar, jeans, faded at the knees, rolled up at the ankles to hide their excessive length. Sneakers, once white, now a determined gray despite her best efforts to keep them clean. People stared as she walked by. Some whispered behind cupped hands. Aaliyah kept her eyes forward, expression neutral. She'd learned long ago that reactions only encouraged them. "Girl, those clothes eating you alive, or what?" a voice called out from a group of teenagers lounging on a corner. Aaliyah didn't flinch, didn't break her stride. Their laughter faded behind her as she rounded the corner toward Lincoln High. The rumble of a powerful engine drew everyone's attention to the school's front entrance. A gleaming black Audi SUV pulled up, music thumping from expensive speakers. The passenger door swung open, and Brent Wilson stepped out, running a hand through his perfectly styled blonde hair. His crisp blue designer polo shirt looked freshly pressed, his white sneakers spotless without a single scuff. A large gold watch, clearly real, glinted on his wrist as he adjusted his Ray-Bans. "Thanks for the ride, Dad," he called back carelessly, not bothering to look at the driver. The window rolled down briefly, revealing a stern-faced man in an expensive suit who nodded curtly before driving away. Brent's friends converged around him instantly. Jackson with his matching designer clothes, Tyler showing off his new phone, and Maddie slipping her arm through Brent's with practiced familiarity. They moved as a unit, parting the crowd of students like royalty. "Yo, check out my dad's new campaign merch," Brent announced, pulling branded caps from his backpack and tossing them to his inner circle. Limited edition, only for the worthy. Some students scrambled to catch the leftovers, desperate to be associated with Brent's circle. Others looked away, knowing better than to hope for inclusion. Aaliyah slipped past them, unnoticed, and headed for her first class. The morning dragged on, each class bleeding into the next. By lunchtime, Aaliyah's stomach growled audibly. She joined the cafeteria line, tray in hand, moving methodically down the counter. The lunch lady, Mrs. Porter with the kind eyes, slipped her an extra roll with a wink. "Here you go, honey. Growing girl needs her strength." Aaliyah offered a small, genuine smile. "Thank you, Mrs. Porter." She found an empty table near the back wall and sat down, carefully arranging her food. She pulled out a worn paperback, their eyes were watching God, and began to read while eating small, measured bites of her lunch. The cafeteria's ambient noise suddenly shifted, like animals sensing a predator. Brent and his entourage had entered, laughing loudly as they claimed their usual table in the center of the room. "For real, though," Brent was saying, voice pitched to Carrie. "My dad says if he wins the election, we're getting a summer house in the Hamptons, private beach access and everything." "That's sick, man," Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "My family's heading to Europe again this summer, but maybe I can visit you there." Their conversation continued at this volume, designed for everyone to hear. Aaliyah kept her eyes on her book, though the words had stopped registering. Then, the inevitable happened. Wait, what is that? Brent's voice cut through the cafeteria noise, his tone dramatically bewildered. Is that, oh my God, is that a shirt or a tent? Laughter rippled through his immediate circle. Aaliyah kept reading, or pretending to. Yo, someone call Salvation Army and tell them one of their donation bags sprouted legs and walked into our cafeteria. The laughter spread wider now. Aaliyah turned a page, though she hadn't finished reading it. Brent stood up, theatrical in his movements. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a fashion emergency. I think someone's grandma exploded all over the new girl. She's not new, Maddie corrected, giggling. That's Aaliyah. She's been here all year. You just don't notice the invisibles. Oh, my bad. Brent grinned, not sorry at all. It's just hard to see someone underneath all those hand-me-downs. What are those pants, girl? Did you borrow them? From the Jolly Green Giant? The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Some students looked uncomfortable but laughed anyway. Others stared at their food, grateful not to be the target. Aaliyah closed her book slowly and set it beside her tray. She took a deliberate sip of water, her face a careful mask of indifference. Hey Jackson, get this on video, Brent continued, walking toward Aaliyah's table. This is what I call Salvation Army Fashion Week. Tonight's category is things my great-grandpa wouldn't even wear. Jackson already had his phone out, recording with a smirk. Got it, bro. This is gold. Brent circled Aaliyah's table now, performing for his audience. Look at those shoes. I think they're trying to escape from her feet. I don't blame them. More laughter. Someone whistled. What's wrong, Salvation Army? Cat got your tongue? Or are those hand-me-down words too big for your mouth? Aaliyah stood up calmly. She gathered her tray, her book, and her backpack with deliberate movements. Her face revealed nothing. No anger, no embarrassment, no fear. She walked to the trash cans, emptied her tray, and headed for the exit. Hey, I'm talking to you, Brent called after her, suddenly irritated by her lack of reaction. Aaliyah paused at the doorway, turned slightly, not quite looking at him, and then continued walking, her footsteps unhurried. The cafeteria broke into confused murmurs. This wasn't how these things usually went. Victims were supposed to cry, or yell back, or run away. Aaliyah's composure was unsettling, even to those who had been laughing. Brent's face flushed with annoyance. Whatever. She probably can't afford to talk either. But his joke fell flat. The moment's energy dissipated. From his position near the serving line, Mr. Reed watched the entire scene unfold. The school janitor's weathered face remained impassive as he leaned on his mop, but his eyes, sharp and assessing, followed Aaliyah's exit, then shifted back to Brent with an evaluating gaze. He nodded to himself slightly before returning to his work, saying nothing. By afternoon, the video was everywhere. Jackson had edited it with crude text overlays, fashion fail and goodwill gone wrong, before uploading it to social media. Students huddled around phones in the hallways, snickering and sharing it widely. When the final bell rang, Aaliyah walked home alone, taking the long route to avoid certain streets. The autumn air had turned cool, but she didn't hurry. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying the cafeteria scene, analyzing her reaction, wondering if she'd done the right thing by walking away. The small two-bedroom apartment she shared with her sister, and grandfather was quiet when she arrived. She checked the time. Kyla would be home from middle school any minute. She put water on to boil for mac and cheese and started sorting through yesterday's laundry. The door burst open 15 minutes later, and 11-year-old Kyla rushed in, her face streaked with tears. Aaliyah! Why didn't you tell me? She demanded, dropping her backpack on the floor. Everyone at school saw it. Desiree showed me the video during recess. Aaliyah's heart sank. What video, Kai? Don't pretend. The one where that rich boy was making fun of your clothes. Our clothes. Kyla's voice cracked. They were all laughing at you, at us. Aaliyah pulled her sister into a tight hug. Hey, look at me. She waited until Kyla's teary eyes met hers. People like that. They only have power if we give it to them. I didn't give him anything today. But everyone saw. Let them see. What do they actually see? They see some spoiled kid being cruel, and they see me walking away with my dignity intact. Aaliyah wiped a tear from her sister's cheek. What we wear doesn't define us, Kai. You know that. But it's not fair, Kyla whispered. We keep everything so clean. Grandpa works so hard. You work at night. I iron everything. And they still laugh. Aaliyah smiled sadly. Life isn't fair, baby girl, but we're strong. Stronger than they know. She tapped Kyla's chest, right above her heart. In here is what matters. And in here, we're rich, Kyla sniffled but managed a small smile. Now go wash up. Dinner's almost ready and you've got homework. After dinner and homework, after getting Kyla to bed, Aaliyah grabbed her cleaning supplies and headed out. The old boxing gym 3 blocks over, Elijah's pride, needed cleaning twice a week. It wasn't much money, but every dollar helped, and her grandfather appreciated the assistance with his struggling business. The gym was mostly empty when she arrived, just a couple of regulars finishing their workouts and her grandfather supervising from his usual chair in the corner. Aaliyah Jefferson had once been a contender, almost made it to the big leagues, as he liked to say. Now, arthritis had stiffened his once powerful frame, but his eyes still held the fire of a fighter. Evening, Grandpa, Aaliyah called out, setting down her bucket of supplies. Elijah nodded in greeting. Boys, wrap it up. Cleaning time. The 2 men nodded respectfully at both Jeffersons before heading to the locker room. Aaliyah started with the bathrooms, then moved to the floor mats, working methodically. She could feel her grandfather watching her, his gaze more intense than usual. Heard about what happened at school today, he finally said. Aaliyah paused, then continued scrubbing. News travels fast. It's a small neighborhood. Elijah shifted in his chair. You didn't fight back. It wasn't a question, but Aaliyah answered anyway. No, sir. The old man studied her. You know what I always taught you about fighting. Only, fight when it matters, she recited. And be smart about when and where. Elijah nodded slowly. There's another lesson, though. Silence is powerful. Until it starts to hurt you more than help you. Aaliyah stopped cleaning and looked up at her grandfather. You walked away today. That took strength, he continued. But I see something in your eyes, girl. Something burning. Don't let it eat you from the inside out. She didn't respond, unsure what to say. Finish up here. It's getting late. After cleaning, Aaliyah found herself standing in front of the cracked full-length mirror in the gym's back room. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across her face. She stared at her reflection. Half of her face looked calm, composed. The other half, shadowed by the flickering light, seemed to burn with something unspoken, something dangerous. For a moment, she didn't recognize herself. Then she blinked, gathered her supplies, and headed home through the dark streets, alone with her thoughts. The alarm blared at 5 a.m., and Aaliyah's hand shot out from beneath the covers to silence it before it woke Kyla. The apartment was still, dark, the world outside barely stirring. She slipped from bed, dressed quickly in sweatpants and a hoodie, and left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone for a run. Back to make breakfast. The streets were empty as she jogged the 3 blocks to Elijah's pride. She had her grandfather's spare key, a privilege earned through trust and necessity. The gym was silent and dark until she flipped on the single row of lights that illuminated the main floor. Aaliyah stood in the center of the room, breathing in the familiar sense of sweat, disinfectant, and the lingering ghost of determination. She walked to the equipment room and pulled out a jump rope, 5 minutes of jumping to warm up. Then she moved to the worn, heavy bag in the corner. Her hands remembered what her mind had tried to forget: how to form a proper fist, how to stand, how to move. She started with light jabs, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. The bag swung gently as she circled it, muscle memory awakening after years of dormancy. Jab, cross, jab, cross. Her breathing fell into rhythm with her punches. The world outside faded away as she focused entirely on the bag, on her form, on the feeling of raw power flowing from her core to her fists. An hour later, sweat-soaked and breathing hard, she gathered her things and locked up. There was just enough time to shower and make breakfast before Kyla needed to get ready for school. Across town, in the manicured subdivision of Oak Hills, Brent Wilson sat at his family's expansive dining table, pushing eggs around his plate while his father loomed over him. A C-, Brent? In basic economics? Richard Wilson slapped the test paper down on the table, his wedding ring making a sharp sound against the polished wood. This is completely unacceptable. How do you expect to get into an Ivy League with grades like these? Dad, it's just one test. One test becomes a pattern. Patterns become habits. Habits become failures. Richard straightened his already perfect tie. I'm launching my campaign for state senate next month. The last thing I need is my son being perceived as anything less than exceptional. Brent's mother, Susan, placed a gentle hand on her husband's arm. Richard, he's trying, and he's very successful socially. Everyone at school looks up to him. Richard scoffed. Social currency doesn't pay for college, Susan, or build a future. He turned back to Brent. I expect to see improvement, immediately. No more videos, no more parties, no more distractions until that grade comes up. But Dad, no buts. Am I understood? Brent's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, sir. Richard checked his watch. I have a breakfast meeting. I'll be home late tonight. Fundraising dinner. He grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door, not waiting for a response. After he left, Susan sighed. He just wants what's best for you, honey. Yeah, what's best for his campaign, you mean? Brent stood up abruptly. I'm going to be late for school. Upstairs, Brent's sister Layla sat cross-legged on her bed, watching his cafeteria video on her phone with a troubled expression. At 17, she was a year older than Brent, but worlds apart in temperament. Where he was loud and performative, she was thoughtful and reserved. Where he sought the spotlight, she preferred to observe from the sidelines. She flinched at the cruel laughter in the video, at the uncomfortable but resigned expression on Aaliyah's face. When Brent's voice rose to its most theatrical mockery, Layla paused the video, unable to continue watching. A knock at her door. Layla, you need a ride to school? It was her mother. No thanks, Mom. Taking my own car today. All right, honey. Have a good day. Layla waited until her mother's footsteps receded, then looked back at the frozen image of Aaliyah on her screen. She sighed deeply, deleted the video from her phone, and began gathering her books for school. Lincoln High buzzed with the usual morning energy when Aaliyah arrived. She kept her head up but her eyes down, avoiding unnecessary contact as she navigated the crowded hallways to her locker. A couple of snickers followed her, along with whispered comments about her outfit, the same jeans as yesterday, paired with a different but equally oversized button-up shirt. When she opened her locker, a small yellow sticky note fell out and fluttered to the floor. Aaliyah picked it up, confused. In neat block printing, it read, "Strong roots grow in hard soil." She looked around, but the hallway was packed with students focused on their own dramas. No one was paying attention to her. She tucked the note into her pocket, gathered her books, and headed to first period, wondering who could have left it. During third period PE, Coach Ramirez divided the class for dodgeball. Brent and his friends were all on one team, of course. Aaliyah found herself on the opposite side, trying to remain invisible despite her height. All right, people, Coach Ramirez blew her whistle sharply. Basic rules. Hit someone, they're out. Catch a ball, throwers out, and one of your teammates comes back in. No headshots. And for the love of God, Wilson, take it easy on the freshmen. This time. Brent grinned wickedly. No promises, Coach. The game began with the usual chaos. Balls flying everywhere, students dodging and weaving. Aaliyah stayed toward the back, focusing more on avoiding being hit than on throwing. She'd almost made it to the halfway point of the game when she noticed Brent whispering to Tyler, both of them looking in her direction. Tyler nodded and grabbed a ball, moving to the side to get a better angle. Aaliyah tensed, instantly alert. The throw came fast, much harder than appropriate for a school game, aimed directly at her midsection. Without thinking, Aaliyah twisted sideways, her body reacting on muscle memory alone. The ball whizzed past her, missing by inches. Tyler looked surprised. Brent frowned. They tried again. Jackson this time, from a different angle. Again, Aaliyah moved just enough to avoid being hit, her movements fluid and precise. Not showy, just effective. Coach Ramirez had stopped watching the rest of the game, her attention now fixed on Aaliyah's subtle but impressive evasions. When the class ended and students filed toward the locker rooms, she approached Aaliyah. "Jefferson, hold." "Up a second," Aaliyah paused. "Yes, coach? Those were some good moves out there. You've got quick reflexes." Aaliyah shrugged. "Just lucky, I guess." Coach Ramirez raised an eyebrow. "That wasn't luck, that was training." She studied Aaliyah's face. "You ever consider joining a team? We could use someone with your instincts for volleyball or track." "No time for after-school activities, coach. I work." "Ah, I see." Ramirez nodded thoughtfully. "Well, if that ever changes, come talk to me. Talent like yours shouldn't go to waste." Aaliyah nodded non-committally and continued to the locker room, unaware that Brent had lingered just inside the gym doors, listening to their conversation with narrowed eyes. That afternoon, when Kyla met Aaliyah at their usual corner to walk home together, something was wrong. The younger girl's shoulders were hunched, her eyes red-rimmed. "What happened?" Aaliyah asked immediately. Kyla shook her head, refusing to talk until they were well away from school. "They showed the video in my lunch period," she finally admitted, as they turned onto their street. "Amanda Griffin and her friends. They asked if I got my clothes from the same dumpster as my sister." Aaliyah's steps faltered. "They said what?" "It's fine," Kyla said quickly, wiping her eyes. "I told them to shut up, but then they started calling me dumpster diver and wouldn't stop." Rage flashed through Aaliyah, hot and sudden. She could handle being targeted herself, but Kyla? That crossed a line. "I'll talk to their parents," she said tightly. "No!" Kyla grabbed her arm. "Please don't make it worse. I'm fine, really." Aaliyah looked down at her sister's pleading face and felt her anger transform into something colder, more focused. "Okay, Kai. But if it happens again, it won't," Kyla assured her, though they both knew better. "Can we just go home now? I've got a ton of math homework." That night, Aaliyah dreamed of her past, flashes of memory, vivid and painful. 13-year-old Aaliyah standing in a youth MMA ring, hands raised in victory, her grandfather cheering from the sidelines. 14-year-old Aaliyah facing a bigger opponent in the regional championships, fear mixing with determination, a brutal exchange of blows, her opponent stumbling, falling awkwardly, the sickening sound of bone breaking, screams from the crowd, blood on the mat, paramedics rushing in, her opponent, Jamie Walker, being carried out on a stretcher, unconscious, the devastating news, severe concussion, broken jaw, months of recovery, ahead. Aaliyah woke with a gasp, her heart pounding. She hadn't thought about Jamie in years, had deliberately pushed those memories away. The night she'd sworn never to fight again. The night she'd decided her power was too dangerous to use. She checked the clock, 3:17 a.m. Too early to get up, too late to fall back asleep easily. She lay in the darkness, listening to Kyla's soft breathing from the other bed, and wondered why these memories were surfacing now. The next day at school, Aaliyah was exhausted from her restless night. She moved through her morning classes in a fog, barely registering the continuing whispers and stares that followed her. Between 4th and 5th periods, as she was gathering books from her locker, a shadow fell across her. She turned to find Brent leaning against the adjacent locker, arms crossed, a smug smile on his face. "So, Salvation Army, I heard an interesting rumor about you," he said, voice pitched low but carrying enough that nearby students slowed to listen. Aaliyah said nothing, continuing to organize her books. "Word is you're working nights cleaning tables at that greasy diner on Maple. What's it called? Big Earl's?" He leaned closer. "Guess those clothes don't pay for themselves, huh? Though honestly, you might want to ask for a refund." A small crowd had gathered now, eager for another show. Aaliyah closed her locker and turned to leave, but Brent stepped into her path. "I'm talking to you," he said, all pretense of humor gone from his voice. "What, you think you're better than me because you're too good to answer?" "I think," Aaliyah said quietly, speaking to him directly for the first time, "that I need to get to class." Brent blinked, momentarily thrown by her calm response. He recovered quickly. "Yeah, wouldn't want to miss any knowledge you can use during your illustrious career as a table wiper. Maybe if you study really hard, they'll let you. Mop floors too." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Aaliyah simply looked at him for a long moment, then stepped around him and continued down the hallway, her back straight, her pace unhurried. Brent stared after her, unsettled again by her composure. It was like trying to provoke a stone. No satisfaction, no reaction, just calm indifference. It infuriated him more than any angry outburst could have. What Aaliyah didn't see, as she walked away, was Layla standing at the edge of the crowd, her expression troubled. Later that afternoon, as the video of this new confrontation began circulating online with crude captions added by Jackson, Layla made a decision. Sitting alone in her bedroom, she created an anonymous account and systematically began reporting Brent's original cafeteria video on every platform where it had been shared. She flagged it for bullying, harassment, and targeted abuse. She did the same for the new locker confrontation video. By evening, most versions of the videos had been removed or restricted. The original upload from Jackson's account had been suspended for community guideline violations. At Elijah's pride, Aaliyah was finishing her usual cleaning routine when her grandfather appeared in the doorway of the supply closet. "You're distracted tonight," he observed. "Missed a spot on the mirrors." Aaliyah sighed. "Sorry, Grandpa. I'll fix it." "What's on your mind, girl?" She hesitated, then decided there was no point hiding it. "That boy at school, he's targeting Kyla now because of me." Elijah's weathered face hardened. "The rich one? The bully?" She nodded. The old man was quiet for a long moment, his eyes distant, calculating. Then he looked directly at her. "Decision made. Tomorrow morning, 5 a.m. Be here ready to work." Aaliyah frowned. "Work? I already clean twice a week." "Not cleaning," Elijah interrupted. "Training," she stiffened. "Grandpa, you don't fight anymore, I know." He stepped closer, his voice gentle but firm. "But this world is fighting you, whether you answer back or not. And your sister's getting hit in the crossfire." Aaliyah looked away, unable to argue with the truth of his words. "If you're gonna fight life," Elijah continued, "might as well fight smart. 5 a.m. Don't be late." He turned and walked away, leaving Aaliyah standing alone among the cleaning supplies, her reflection fragmented in the newly polished mirrors surrounding her, each piece showing a different aspect of her face, her identity, her carefully contained power. Outside the gym's windows, night had fallen completely. The streets were dark except for the occasional flickering streetlight. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The world continued its relentless motion, indifferent to individual struggles. Aaliyah closed the supply closet and prepared to leave, her mind already racing ahead to tomorrow morning, to what returning to training might mean, to the person she used to be and the person she might become, to the fight that was coming, whether she wanted it or not. The gym was silent when Aaliyah arrived at 4:55 a.m., save for the rhythmic thump of a jump rope hitting the floor. Grandpa Elijah was already there, warming up despite his arthritis, sweat beading on his forehead. "You're early," he noted without breaking rhythm. "Good." Aaliyah set down her backpack. "I said I'd be here." Elijah finished his count, then let the rope fall still. "Take off your shoes. We start with fundamentals." What followed was the most grueling morning of Aaliyah's recent memory. Elijah was relentless, pushing her through footwork drills until her calves burned, making her repeat the same basic punch combinations until her shoulders ached. He corrected every minor flaw in her form with the precision of a surgeon. "Again," he demanded, after she completed 50 perfect jabs. "But this time, feel it here." He tapped her solar plexus. Power comes from center, not just arms. By the time the session ended, Aaliyah was drenched in sweat, muscles trembling with exhaustion. She gulped water from a bottle, watching her grandfather with newfound respect. Despite his age and physical limitations, Elijah's mind remained razor sharp, his knowledge of fighting profound. Same time tomorrow, he said, not a question but a command. I'll be here, she promised, wincing as she gathered her things. Later that afternoon, Aaliyah was restocking paper towels in the girls' bathroom when Coach Ramirez found her. Jefferson, got a minute? Aaliyah turned, surprised. Yes, Coach? Ramirez glanced around to ensure they were alone. I was talking to your grandfather yesterday. Aaliyah froze. About what? About you. About your potential. Ramirez leaned against the sink. Elijah and I go way back. He mentioned you might be getting back into training. It's just some basic conditioning, Aaliyah said carefully. Ramirez nodded, seemingly satisfied with that answer. Look, there's something you should know about. It's not school-sanctioned, so officially, we never had this conversation. But there's an underground circuit, all female fighters, very disciplined, very respectful. Not street brawls, but not exactly licensed either. I'm not looking to fight, Coach. Maybe not, but sometimes we need to see what's possible. Ramirez handed her a small card with an address and time scrawled on it. Just come observe tomorrow night. No pressure, no expectations, but I think you might find what you're looking for there. Aaliyah took the card hesitantly. Why are you telling me this? Because talent without direction becomes frustration, and frustration becomes something ugly. Ramirez straightened up. Just think about it. The coach left, leaving Aaliyah alone, with the card and her thoughts. The following evening, curiosity got the better of her. After ensuring Kyla was settled with homework and a microwaved dinner, Aaliyah made her way to the address, an unmarked door behind an old community center in the industrial district. A woman with muscular arms and a stern expression guarded the entrance. She raised an eyebrow when Aaliyah approached. I'm here to watch, Aaliyah said quietly, showing the card Ramirez had given her. The woman studied her for a moment, then nodded. Ramirez's girl. Come on in. Keep your opinions to yourself and your hands to yourself unless invited otherwise. Inside, Aaliyah discovered a world she never knew existed. The space was a converted warehouse, clean and well-organized, despite its rough exterior. A regulation-sized boxing ring dominated the center, surrounded by training equipment and bleacher-style seating. But it was the women that caught Aaliyah's attention. Dozens of them, of all ages, shapes, and backgrounds. A gray-haired woman in her 60s wrapped a younger fighter's hands with the precision of a surgeon. A heavy-set woman with tribal tattoos executed perfect technique on a speed bag. A pair of college-age twins sparred in a corner, their movements synchronized like a dance. First time? Aaliyah turned to find a black woman in her 30s standing. Beside her, arms crossed over a t-shirt that read, "Queens never quit." Is it that obvious? Aaliyah asked. The woman smiled. I'm Tasha, head referee and occasional participant. Aaliyah, Elijah's granddaughter. Tasha nodded. Word travels. Come on, observation is better from the second row. Tasha led her to a seat just as the lights dimmed slightly and the crowd fell silent. Two women entered the ring, one tall and lean with protective braids, the other compact and powerful with a shaved head. Desiree versus Monica, Tasha explained, quietly. Both 5-year veterans. Watch their feet, not just their hands. The fight that followed was nothing like the MMA matches Aaliyah remembered from her youth. It was technical, strategic, almost beautiful in its controlled violence. Neither woman showboated or taunted. They fought with intensity but clear respect, acknowledging good hits with slight nods. When it ended, Monica winning by decision, the fighters embraced, genuine and warm. The crowd applauded appreciatively, no booing or jeering. Why do they do this? Aaliyah asked Tasha as the next pair prepared to fight. It's not professional. There's no big money or fame. Tasha smiled. For some, it's discipline. For others, therapy. For most, it's about proving something to themselves, not others. She studied Aaliyah's face. We all fight something, Jefferson. Might as well learn to do it properly. Aaliyah stayed for 3 more matches, transfixed by the skill, the community, the unspoken code of honor that permeated the space. This wasn't about brutality or dominance. It was about mastery, respect, and inner strength. Back at school, Brent had grown increasingly frustrated with Aaliyah's continued indifference to his taunts. The videos being taken down had infuriated him further, though he had no idea his sister was responsible. She still walks around like she's better than everyone, he complained to Jackson as they watched Aaliyah cross the quad during lunch period. Look at her, same pathetic clothes but acting like she's untouchable. Maybe we need to try something different, Jackson suggested. The videos aren't working anymore. Brent's eyes narrowed as an idea formed. You know what? You're right. We need to get more hands-on. The opportunity came the next day. As students streamed through the hallway between classes, Brent, accidentally, bumped into Aaliyah hard enough to send her books scattering. Before she could react, he grabbed the worn backpack hanging from her shoulder. What's this, held together with prayers and duct tape? He laughed, examining the frayed straps and faded material. I'm doing you a favor, Salvation Army. With a theatrical flourish, he gripped the backpack's main seam and yanked. The fabric, already weakened from years of use, tore with a sickening rip. Books, papers, and personal items spilled across the hallway floor as students stopped to watch. Aaliyah stood perfectly still, her face a careful mask. But something in her eyes had changed, a flash of calculation where once there had been only resignation. Mr. Reed appeared from nowhere, his mop in hand. Everyone get to class, he ordered, his voice carrying unexpected authority. Now. Students scattered, though Brent lingered, smirking. Oops, my bad. As Aaliyah knelt to gather her belongings, she felt rather than saw Mr. Reed's presence beside her. Some messes can't be cleaned up, he said quietly, helping her collect scattered papers. Some require a different approach. She looked up, meeting his gaze directly. What approach would that be, Mr. Reed? He handed her a notebook, his calloused hands steady. Come by the maintenance room after 7th period. I might have a spare backpack for you. 2 nights later, Aaliyah found herself back at the underground fight venue, but this time, Tasha led her to the preparation area. Just a friendly spar, Tasha assured her, helping her wrap her hands. Nina's been doing this 3 months. She's good, but green. No pressure, no judgment. Aaliyah's heart hammered in her chest as she stepped into the ring. The crowd, smaller tonight, just 20 or so regulars, murmured with interest at seeing a new face. Her opponent, Nina, nodded respectfully. 3 one-minute rounds, just technique, no knockouts. Good? Good, Aaliyah agreed, her mouth dry. The bell rang and everything else fell away. Nina was quick, aggressive, throwing combinations that would have overwhelmed a novice, but Aaliyah's muscle memory kicked in, her body responding to years of training that her mind had tried to forget. She lost the first round, finding her rhythm too late. The second round was closer, as she remembered to use her reach advantage. By the third round, something had awakened fully inside her, a fluid, focused calm that allowed her to see openings before they appeared. She still lost the match by a narrow margin, but the crowd's reaction told her everything. They weren't seeing a failure, they were seeing potential. You've got natural talent, Nina told her afterward, both of them sweating and breathing hard. But you're fighting your own instincts. Stop holding back. Aaliyah nodded, understanding exactly what Nina meant. She'd been fighting herself more than her opponent. As she gathered her things to leave, she noticed a figure slipping out the back door, a glimpse of familiar blonde hair disappearing into the night. For a moment, she thought she'd imagined it. But the uneasy feeling remained. Layla Wilson had followed her and had seen everything. The confrontation came the next morning. Aaliyah was at her locker when Layla approached, her designer boots clicking purposefully on the linoleum. We need to talk, Layla said, voice low but firm. Now. Aaliyah closed her locker slowly. About what? About what I saw last night. Layla's expression was unreadable. The warehouse, the fight. Aaliyah's stomach dropped, but she kept her face neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Save it. Layla glanced around to ensure no one was listening. Look, I'm not here to expose you or anything. I just wanted you to know that I know. Why were you following me? Layla looked uncomfortable for the first time. I've been curious about you. About why Brent's so obsessed with making your life miserable. And did you figure it out? I think so. Layla met her eyes directly. He can sense what I saw last night, that you're not actually powerless, that you're choosing not to fight back, and it drives him crazy. Aaliyah said nothing, waiting. He's planning something, Layla continued. Some kind of fake charity event. Donate clothes for kids in need, or something equally disgusting. It's a setup to humiliate you publicly at the spring assembly. Why are you telling me this? Layla shifted her weight. Because I'm sick of it. Because what he's doing is wrong. Because maybe I'm trying to balance scales I've let tip too far for too long. She paused. Just be careful, okay? Brent doesn't fight fair. Before Aaliyah could respond, Layla walked away, her shoulders tight with tension. That afternoon, Aaliyah was mopping the gym floor when she heard rhythmic sounds coming from the equipment room. Curious, she followed the noise to find Mr. Reed, the quiet janitor, expertly shadowboxing in the empty space. His form was flawless, his movements precise and powerful despite his age. This was no amateur hobby. This was the muscle memory of a professional. You gonna stand there all day or you want to come in? Mr. Reed asked without breaking rhythm. Aaliyah stepped into the room. You're a fighter. Was. He finished his combination, with a perfect slip and hook, then straightened up. Long time ago. Why are you working as a school janitor? He smiled slightly. Because life has a way of bringing you exactly where you need to be. He grabbed a towel to wipe his face. Like, it brought you here right now. What do you mean? I mean, I've been watching you, Aaliyah. Watching how you handle that Wilson kid. Watching you absorb his punches without hitting back. He studied her face. But sometimes, the right punch at the right time can end a fight before it really begins. Don't want to fight him. Nobody wants to fight. But sometimes we need to. Mr. Reed sat on a bench, gesturing for her to join him. I can show you things your grandfather can't. Close quarters defense. How to neutralize someone bigger without causing permanent damage. Mental tactics. Why would you help me? Because 20 years ago I was Brent Wilson, and someone took the time to show me a better way before I ruined my life completely. He extended his hand. What do you say? Meanwhile, across town in the Wilson household, Richard Wilson was coaching his son in the study. The spring assembly will be crucial for community optics, Richard explained, reviewing notes on his tablet. We need to showcase your leadership and compassion ahead of my June announcement. I've got it covered, Dad, Brent assured him. I'm organizing a clothing drive for underprivileged students. Very photogenic, very shareable. Good. Just make sure it's tasteful. No stunts, no drama. Richard's tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. Every move we make now reflects on the campaign. Layla stood in the hallway outside the study, her phone recording their conversation. Her hand trembled slightly as she listened to her father essentially coaching Brent on manipulating public perception. When she heard Brent begin describing the special presentation he had planned for Aaliyah, her disgust solidified into resolve. She stopped recording, carefully saved the file, and retreated to her room to think about what to do next. The following day, after-school training with Mr. Reed began. The maintenance room, usually cluttered with cleaning supplies, had been partially cleared to create a small practice space. First lesson, Mr. Reed said, standing across from Aaliyah. Fighting in close quarters isn't about power. It's about position and pressure points. He demonstrated techniques Aaliyah had never seen before. Subtle joint manipulations, weight transfers that could unbalance a larger opponent, throat and solar plexus strikes that required minimal force for maximum effect. This isn't sport. Fighting, he explained as they practiced. This is survival fighting. No rules, no referees, no points, just getting home safe. Aaliyah was a quick study, her previous training giving her an advantage in picking up the new techniques. By their third session, she was executing combinations that made Mr. Reed nod in approval. You're a natural, but technique is only half the battle. He tapped his temple. The mind game is where most fights are really won. What do you mean? Mean Brent Wilson is mentally weak. He fights to impress others, not himself. He needs an audience. Take that away, and he's just a scared kid playing tough. Aaliyah considered this. So how do I use that? By understanding your own why. Why are you fighting? Who are you fighting for? Answer that and you'll find your edge. That evening, the pressure finally became too much. In the quiet of Elijah's gym, after hours of training with her grandfather followed by cleaning duties, Aaliyah's carefully constructed composure cracked. She sat on a bench, wrapped hands pressed against her eyes, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Elijah found her like that, his strong, stoic granddaughter finally allowing herself to break. He sat beside her, his weathered hand gentle on her back. "This is too much, Grandpa," she whispered. "School, work, training, taking care of Kyla. And now Brent's planning something big, something public. You carrying too many burdens alone." Elijah agreed softly. True fighters cry when no one's watching, gets the poison out. "I don't know if I can do this." "You already doing it." He lifted her chin, making her meet his eyes. "And you not doing it alone anymore. You got me. You got this Reed fellow. You got them underground queens. And you got something Brent Wilson never had." "What's that?" "Something real worth fighting for." The next morning, the school was buzzing with news of the upcoming assembly. Posters announced, "Wilson wears clothing our community." Brent's charitable initiative, prominently featuring his father's campaign logo in the corner. In the cafeteria, Brent stood on a table addressing the crowd. "We're collecting gently used clothes for those in need," he announced, his voice carrying across the room. "And at Friday's assembly, we'll have a special presentation showing just how much difference a little generosity can make." His eyes found Aaliyah in the crowd, his smile sharpening. "In fact, I'd like to personally invite Aaliyah Jefferson to be our guest of honor. What do you say, Aaliyah? Ready to help others avoid your fashion challenges?" The cafeteria fell, silent, all eyes turning to Aaliyah. The challenge was unmistakable, the trap obvious. She stood slowly, her voice clear and steady. "I'll be there." Whispers erupted immediately. Brent's eyes widened slightly. He hadn't expected her to accept so readily. "Great," he recovered quickly. "Friday at 3 p.m., don't be late." As the crowd dispersed, Kyla pushed through to reach her sister. "Aaliyah, you can't go. I overheard Jackson talking. They've got something really bad planned." "What kind of something?" Kyla lowered her voice. "They've hired some guys, older guys from East Side, to mess with you if you actually show up." "Like really mess with you?" Aaliyah's face hardened. "Thanks for telling me, Kai." "So you won't go, right?" Aaliyah looked across the cafeteria, where Brent was celebrating with his crew, already assuming victory. Mr. Reed was mopping nearby, watching everything. Coach Ramirez stood by the doors, her arms crossed, her expression concerned. "No," Aaliyah said quietly. "I'm definitely going." She turned back to her sister with a new resolve in her eyes. "But I won't be going alone." Later that evening, Aaliyah stood in front of the mirror at Elijah's gym. Her reflection had changed over the past weeks, not just physically, though her muscles had definitely toned from training. It was her eyes that were different, clear, focused, resolved. "If this is what they want," she whispered to herself, "let's dance." The gym was silent except for the rhythmic sounds of Aaliyah's fists hitting the heavy bag. Sweat dripped from her forehead as she worked through the combination Grandpa Elijah had taught her earlier: jab, cross, hook, slip. Her muscles burned with familiar pain, a sensation she'd once avoided, but now welcomed. When she finally stopped, chest heaving, she found Elijah watching her from his usual chair in the corner. His weathered face was unreadable, but his eyes held concern. "You're pushing too hard," he said simply. Aaliyah unwrapped her hands, wincing as she flexed her tender knuckles. "I need to be ready." "Ready for what? To beat that boy senseless? That what you think this is about?" She didn't answer, focusing instead on coiling her hand wraps neatly. Elijah sighed heavily, then pulled himself to his feet with a grunt. He crossed the room and took the wraps from her hands, setting them aside. "Look at me, girl." When she met his eyes, the kindness there nearly broke her. After weeks of holding herself together, of being strong for Kyla, of enduring Brent's escalating torments, the unexpected gentleness in her grandfather's gaze was almost too much to bear. "I saw you crying yesterday," he said softly. "No shame in that. True fighters cry when no one's watching. Gets the poison out." Aaliyah's eyes welled up despite her best efforts. "I'm just so tired, Grandpa." "I know you are." He guided her to sit beside him on a nearby bench. "This world'll try to break you before it respects you, but fighters, real fighters, build from broken." "Maybe Brent's right," she whispered, the admission painful. "Maybe I am just a poor charity case. Maybe that's all I'll ever be." Elijah was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his back pocket and pulled out his wallet. From it, he extracted a worn, creased photograph and handed it to her. The image showed a much younger version of her grandfather, thin to the point of gauntness, standing outside this very gym. His clothes were ragged, his expression haunted but defiant. "That's me. 1983. Just got out of the service. No job, no home. Sleeping under the bridge 3 blocks from here." Elijah's voice grew distant with memory. "People crossed the street. When they saw me coming, called me trash to my face." Aaliyah stared at the photo, trying to reconcile this desperate young man with the proud grandfather she'd always known. 2 years later, Elijah continued, "I was the most feared fighter in the underground circuit. Not 'cause I was the biggest or strongest, 'cause I was hungry in a way them other boys could never understand." He took the photo back, looking at it with a complicated mix of emotions. "You got that same hunger in you, Aaliyah. That same fire. Don't you ever let nobody tell you what you are or ain't. You define you." The next morning, Aaliyah arrived at school early for a change. The halls were nearly empty as she made her way to the gym bleachers, hoping to find a quiet place to review her notes before first period. The sound of a basketball hitting hardwood drew her attention. Through the gym doors, she saw Mr. Reed practicing free throws, each shot sailing through the net with practiced precision. "You're up early," he called out without turning around. "So are you," she replied, setting down her backpack, a new one, that Elijah had given her, simple but sturdy. Reed retrieved his ball and sat beside her on the lowest bleacher. "Heard you accepted Wilson's challenge. Bold move." "I'm tired of running." He nodded thoughtfully. "I used to be a street fighter too, you know. Undefeated for 3 years. What happened? Met a man who showed me a better way to use my skills." Reed bounced the ball absently. "Before that I was just angry, fighting to hurt people because I was hurting. After I fought with purpose." "What's your purpose now?" Reed smiled slightly. "Some days keeping these floors clean. Other days—" He glanced at her. "Helping kids like you find their way." "I don't even know what my way is anymore." "Sure you do." He tossed her the basketball. "You just got lost in the noise for a while, but you're finding your path back." In history class that afternoon, Aaliyah noticed Brent hunched over his phone, texting furiously with Jackson beside him. Every few seconds, they'd glance in her direction and smirk. She kept her face neutral, but her mind raced, wondering what final blow they were planning for Friday's assembly. After school, she found Layla waiting by her locker. "They've got something big planned," Layla said without preamble, her voice low. "My dad is coaching him on it. All about optics and narrative. Control for the campaign. Any details?" Layla shook her head. "Just that it's elaborate and mean. And my father is basically encouraging it as long as it makes Brent look like a charitable hero." "Why do you care?" Aaliyah asked bluntly. "Why are you helping me?" Layla looked away, uncomfortable. "Because I've spent too long watching and not doing anything. Because my brother wasn't always like this. Because my father is turning him into a monster and I hate it." Before Aaliyah could respond, Layla pressed something into her hand. A flash drive. It's not much, but it's evidence. My dad discussing the bad element in school and how to handle problems quietly before the election. She met Aaliyah's eyes. Use it if you need to. That night, while Kyla slept soundly in the next bed, Aaliyah stared at the ceiling, unable to rest. Tomorrow was the night of her secret training session with Mr. Reed. The day after was the assembly. Events were accelerating, forcing her toward a confrontation she'd spent years avoiding. Her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. Midnight tomorrow. The Queens want to see what you've got. No pressure. Our coach Ramirez. The underground fights. A chance to test herself in a controlled environment before facing whatever Brent had planned. Aaliyah typed back, "I'll be there." She set down her phone and closed her eyes, finally drifting toward sleep as a plan began forming in her mind. The next evening, after helping Kyla with homework and leaving her with Grandpa Elijah, Aaliyah made her way to Mr. Reed's small apartment above a convenience store in the old district. The space was sparse but spotlessly clean, much like the man himself. "We're going to focus on defense tonight," Reed explained, clearing furniture to create a training space. "When someone comes at you with bad intentions, you need to read their body language before they even move." For the next 2 hours, he taught her to recognize the subtle tells that precede an attack: weight shifts, eye movements, shoulder tension. Then he showed her how to redirect that energy rather than meeting it head-on. "You're smaller than most opponents you'll face," he explained. "That means you need to be smarter. Use their momentum against them. Make them beat themselves." By the time they finished, Aaliyah had mastered several defensive techniques that required minimal strength but maximum timing. "One last thing," Reed said as she prepared to leave. "Whatever happens Friday, remember this isn't about beating Brent. It's about standing your ground. There's a difference." She nodded, understanding more than he realized. At midnight, Aaliyah slipped into the warehouse where the Queens held their fights. The crowd was larger tonight. Nearly 50 women of all ages packed around the ring. Tasha met her at the door. "Coach says you're ready for a real match," Tasha said, eyeing her critically. "Are you?" "I think so." "Good enough for me. Your opponent is Desiree. She's got 3 years' experience, but she'll keep it clean. 3 rounds, standard rules." Aaliyah's heart hammered as she changed into the simple gear Tasha provided: hand wraps, mouth guard, gloves. This was different from her training sessions, different from the friendly spar with Nina. This was a true test. The fight began with Aaliyah on the defensive, Desiree pressing forward with confident combinations. By the second round, Aaliyah had found her rhythm, slipping punches and countering with increasing precision. The final round saw both fighters breathing hard, exchanging blows that drew gasps from the crowd. When the bell rang, Aaliyah had won by a narrow margin, her first victory in years. "You're good," Desiree told her afterward, respect evident in her voice. "But you're still holding back, like you're afraid of something." "I am," Aaliyah admitted. "I hurt someone once. Badly." Desiree nodded, understanding. "That fear will protect you from becoming a bully. But don't let it stop you from becoming a fighter. There's a difference there, too." Walking home that night, her body sore but her mind clearer than it had been in months, Aaliyah knew what she needed to do. It wasn't about beating Brent anymore. It was about standing firmly in her own power, regardless of the outcome. The next morning, Kyla found her in the bathroom, carefully styling her hair. "Are you really going to that assembly?" Kyla asked, worry etching her young face. "Yes. But what if they hurt you?" Aaliyah turned from the mirror to face her sister. "They can't hurt me anymore, Kai. Not in any way that matters." Kyla didn't look convinced. "I'm scared for you." "I know. But sometimes being brave means doing the thing that scares you." She kissed her sister's forehead. "I've got this. Trust me." When Aaliyah walked through the school doors that morning, something had shifted. Perhaps it was the way she carried herself. Shoulders back, head high, movements fluid with newfound confidence. Perhaps it was the quiet determination in her eyes. Whatever it was, other students noticed, stepping aside as she passed, watching with curious expressions. Even Brent seemed momentarily taken aback when he spotted her in the hallway, though he quickly recovered, leaning over to whisper something to Jackson that made them both snicker. During lunch, Coach Ramirez found her sitting alone. "Heard you impressed the Queens last night," she said, sitting down across from Aaliyah. "News travels fast, in some circles." Ramirez studied her face. "You ready for whatever comes next?" Aaliyah nodded. "More than ready." "Good." The coach stood up. "Just remember, true strength isn't about who hits hardest. It's about who can take the hits and still stand tall." As the final bell approached, announcing the start of the assembly, Aaliyah took a moment alone in the bathroom to center herself. She stared at her reflection, no longer seeing the uncertainties and fears that had plagued her for years. Instead, she saw a young woman coming into her power, ready to face whatever lay ahead. "Let's dance," she whispered to herself, and walked out to meet her destiny. The school auditorium buzzed with excitement as students filed in for the Wilson Wears charity assembly. A stage had been set up at the front, decorated with professionally printed banners bearing both the charity name and, in smaller but still prominent lettering, sponsored by Wilson for State Senate. Two large clothing racks stood on either side of the stage, filled with new-looking garments, price tags still attached to many of them. A podium centered downstage held a microphone, beside which Brent Wilson stood chatting with the principal, looking every inch the young philanthropist in a crisp button-down and khakis. Aaliyah entered quietly and took a seat in the middle of the auditorium, neither hiding at the back nor calling attention to herself at the front. A few students glanced her way, whispering behind their hands, clearly aware that something was about to happen. Minutes later, the principal stepped to the podium, tapping the microphone to call for attention. "Good afternoon, Lincoln High. Today, we have a special presentation from one of our own students. Brent Wilson has organized a clothing drive to benefit less fortunate members of our community, and he's here to tell us about this wonderful initiative. Let's give him a warm welcome." Polite applause filled the room as Brent took the stage, his camera-ready smile firmly in place. "Thank you, Principal Winters. As many of you know, my father has always taught me the importance of giving back to our community." He paused, allowing the reference to his father's political aspirations to register. "That's why I started Wilson Wears, to ensure that everyone in our school and our neighborhood has access to quality clothing, regardless of their economic situation." More applause, more enthusiastic this time. Brent was in his element, commanding the room with practiced ease. "Today, I'm proud to announce that we've collected over 200 items of clothing, all of which will be distributed to those in need." He gestured to the racks behind him. "But before we send these items out into the community, I wanted to demonstrate the transformative power of proper attire." A murmur ran through the crowd. "This wasn't part of the announced program. I'd like to invite a special guest to join me on stage, someone whose daily fashion challenges have inspired this entire initiative." Brent's smile sharpened as his eyes found Aaliyah in the audience. "Aaliyah Jefferson, would you please come up here?" The auditorium fell silent as all heads turned toward Aaliyah. This was the moment of truth, the trap springing shut. Based on Kyla's intelligence, Brent had planned to publicly humiliate her, then have his hired thugs waiting if she tried to retaliate after the assembly. With deliberate calm, Aaliyah stood up. She was dressed simply, but neatly. Clean jeans, without visible patches, a plain white button-up that was only slightly too large, and her worn but polished sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, emphasizing her strong features and clear eyes. As she walked toward the stage, she caught sight of Mr. Reed standing by the side exit, arms crossed, watching intently. Coach Ramirez was near the front row, her expression alert but confident. And there, surprising her slightly, was Grandpa Elijah, having somehow found time to attend despite his afternoon physical therapy appointment. Aaliyah climbed the steps to the stage, maintaining eye contact with Brent the entire time. His smile faltered slightly at her composure, but quickly reasserted itself. "Everyone, give it up for our guest of honor," Brent announced, gesturing grandly as if introducing a celebrity. "Aaliyah here has been wearing the same 3 outfits all year, All hand-me-downs, all several sizes too big. She's the perfect example of why Wilson wears is so necessary. A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the audience, but most students remained awkwardly silent, aware they were witnessing something uncomfortable. In fact, Brent continued, warming to his theme, I've prepared a special before and after presentation. First, let's see what Aaliyah typically looks like. He clicked a remote, and the projection screen behind them lit up with an unflattering photo of Aaliyah from weeks earlier, wearing her most oversized outfit, caught mid-motion so she appeared awkward and uncomfortable. More uncomfortable silence from the audience. And now, Brent announced triumphantly, let's see what proper clothing can do. I've personally selected an outfit that I think will transform our Cinderella here into... Actually, a voice cut through from the sound booth, I think there's been a change to the presentation. The screen behind Brent suddenly shifted. Now, displaying a series of text messages, his own messages to Jackson detailing their plan. Wait, what's happening? Brent sputtered, turning to look at the screen in confusion. The texts were damning. Got the perfect setup to humiliate Salvation Army girl once and for all. Dad says it's good campaign optics as long as I look charitable. Doing it. Got those East Side guys lined up to rough her up if she causes problems after. The outfit I picked for her is like 3 sizes too small. Gonna be hilarious when she tries it on. The auditorium erupted in shocked whispers. Brent spun wildly, searching for whoever had hijacked his presentation. His eyes landed on the sound booth where Layla stood, microphone in hand, her face set, with determination. I think everyone deserves to know what this charity is really about, Layla said, her voice carrying throughout the room. My brother isn't interested in helping anyone. This whole thing was designed to publicly humiliate Aaliyah, with our father's knowledge and approval, all to boost their public image. The screen changed again, now showing a video clip of Richard Wilson coaching Brent. Just make sure it looks good for the cameras. We need to manage the optics here. If that girl causes any problems, handle it quietly. Election season is no time for scandals. Stunned silence fell over the auditorium. Principal Winters stepped forward, clearly flustered, reaching for the microphone. I think there's been some misunderstanding, but the damage was done. Students were already standing up, many booing, others simply walking out in disgust. Teachers looked at each other uncertainly, unsure how to regain control of the situation. Brent's face had gone from shocked to furious. He turned on Aaliyah, all pretense of charity forgotten. You planned this, he hissed. You and my traitor sister. Aaliyah shook her head slightly. I didn't plan anything. But I'm not surprised. It happened. Truth has a way of coming out. You think you've won? Brent snarled, stepping closer, his voice low enough that only she could hear. This isn't over, not by a long shot. Actually, it is, Aaliyah replied calmly. You just don't know it yet. She turned and walked off the stage, ignoring the chaos behind her. Layla had disappeared from the sound booth. Principal Winters was attempting to restore order. And Brent stood abandoned in the center of the stage, his charity facade in tatters, his true nature exposed for all to see. After the assembly officially ended, cut short by Principal Winters claiming technical difficulties, Aaliyah was, gathering her things from her locker when she sensed a presence behind her. She turned to find Brent standing there, alone for once, his face twisted with rage. You think you're so smart, he said, his voice shaking. You think you've got it all figured out. I think we're done here, Brent, Aaliyah replied, closing her locker. Let it go. Let it go? He stepped closer, invading her space. You humiliated me in front of the whole school. My dad is going to kill me. And you want me to let it go? You humiliated yourself. I just refused to be your victim. Something in Brent snapped. His hand shot out, aiming for her collar, intending to push her against the lockers. It never connected. With the fluid precision Mr. Reed had taught her, Aaliyah sidestepped the lunge, using Brent's own momentum to carry him past her. He stumbled, catching himself against the lockers with a loud clang. Don't, Aaliyah warned, as he regained his balance and turned back toward her. But Brent was beyond reason now. He swung wildly, his fist sailing toward her face. Again, she moved, not with fear but with calculation, slipping the punch and blocking his arm with a precise strike that sent a jolt of pain up to his shoulder. From the shadows of the adjacent hallway, Mr. Reed watched silently, ready to intervene, if necessary, but allowing Aaliyah to handle the situation. He smiled faintly at her perfect execution of the techniques they'd practiced. "What the hell?" Brent gasped, clutching his arm. "Since when do you—" "There's a lot you don't know about me," Aaliyah said quietly. "A lot you never bothered to learn before deciding I was beneath you." "This isn't over," Brent growled, though he kept his distance now. "Meet me at the abandoned factory lot after school tomorrow. No audience, no sister to save you, just you and me, unless you're scared." Aaliyah looked at him steadily, seeing past his bravado to the insecurity beneath. "I'm not scared of you, Brent. I never was." "Prove it." "Factory lot. Tomorrow at 4. "I'll be there." She turned to leave, then paused. "But don't expect me to come alone." As Brent stomped away, Mr. Reed emerged from the shadows. "You handled that well," he said, though I'm not sure accepting his challenge was wise. "It wasn't about wisdom," Aaliyah replied. "It was about ending this once and for all." "And how do you plan to do that?" Aaliyah's expression was calm but determined. "By showing him and myself what real strength looks like." That evening, word of the confrontation spread quickly through both the school grapevine and the underground fighting community. The Queens reached out through Tasha, offering their presence as witnesses and protection. Mr. Reed made his own calls to former fighting associates. Coach Ramirez discreetly informed Elijah, who began making arrangements of his own. By nightfall, what Brent had intended as an isolated beatdown had transformed into something else entirely, a reckoning observed by those who understood true strength and honor. Aaliyah stood at her bedroom window that night, looking out at the stars barely visible through the city's light pollution. Tomorrow would bring the confrontation she'd avoided for years, not just with Brent, but with her own power and the responsibility that came with it. "You ready for tomorrow?" Kyla asked from her bed, voice small with worry. "Yes," Aaliyah answered simply. "Are you going to hurt him, like that girl you told me about before?" Aaliyah turned from the window. "No, that's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" "Breaking chains," Aaliyah said softly. "His and mine." The abandoned factory lot stood silent in the afternoon sun, its crumbling brick walls and broken windows testifying to years of neglect. Chain-link fencing, rusted and sagging, surrounded the property, though numerous gaps provided easy access. Graffiti covered nearly every surface, some artistic, most just territorial markings. Aaliyah arrived at 3:45, 15 minutes early, wanting to survey the area before Brent showed up. She wore simple clothes, jeans that allowed easy movement, a plain t-shirt, and her worn but reliable sneakers. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail, practical rather than stylish. She wasn't alone. Mr. Reed walked silently beside her, his presence reassuring without being overbearing. Behind them came Tasha and 3 other fighters from the Queens, their expressions serious but calm. "You sure about this?" Mr. Reed asked quietly as they approached the largest gap in the fence. Aaliyah nodded. "I need to finish it." "Remember what I taught you," he said. "Smart, not hard. End it quick if you can." "I will." They entered the lot, finding the open area in front of the main building already occupied. Word had spread faster than Aaliyah anticipated. Nearly 30 students from Lincoln High stood in loose groups, phones ready to record whatever happened. A handful of neighbors had gathered too, adults who should have known better but couldn't resist the promise of drama. Most surprising were the 5 women who stood apart from the others, older fighters from the underground circuit whom Aaliyah recognized but had never personally met. They nodded respectfully as her group approached, a silent show of solidarity that touched her unexpectedly. At 3:55, engine noise announced new arrivals. 3 cars pulled up outside the fence, Brent's familiar black Audi SUV, followed by Jackson's convertible and an older pickup truck Aaliyah didn't recognize. Brent emerged from his vehicle, flanked by Jackson and Tyler. He'd changed into what he clearly thought were fighting clothes, expensive athletic wear and spotless cross trainers that had never seen actual training. He stopped short when he saw the crowd, clearly surprised by the turnout. "What is this?" he demanded as he approached. "I said no audience." "I don't control who shows up," Aaliyah replied calmly. "Seems like people are interested in how this ends." Brent's eyes darted nervously to Mr. Reed and the Queen's fighters. "Brought your bodyguards, huh? Scared to face me alone?" "They're just here to watch." Aaliyah stepped forward, creating distance between herself and her supporters. "This is between you and me." From the pickup truck, 3 older guys emerged, early 20s, with the hard looks of neighborhood troublemakers. Aaliyah recognized one of them, Pete Daniels, a former student who'd been expelled 2 years ago for fighting. The other 2 were strangers, but their purpose was clear from the brass knuckles one was casually slipping onto his fingers. "Actually," Brent said with a smirk, "I brought some friends too, just to make sure things stay fair." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't going to be a fair fight at all. It was going to be an assault, 4 against 1. Mr. Reed stepped forward, his voice carrying across the lot. "That's not how this works, Wilson." "And who are you to decide?" Brent sneered. "The janitor? I'm the man who's going to make sure nobody gets jumped today." Reed's stance shifted slightly, subtle to most observers, but instantly recognizable to anyone with fighting experience. The 3 goons from the truck hesitated, sensing something dangerous in the older man's demeanor. "Your choice," Reed continued evenly. "One-on-one with Aaliyah, or you all walk away now. Those are the only options." Brent looked to his hired muscle, expecting them to ignore Reed's warning. Instead, he found them exchanging uncertain glances. "You didn't tell us there'd be grown men involved," Pete muttered. "I'm on probation, man. I can't afford trouble." "I'm paying you to do a job," Brent hissed. "Not enough," Pete replied, backing away. "Not for this." The other 2 followed Pete's lead, retreating toward their truck. Brent watched in disbelief as his advantage evaporated before his eyes. "Some friends," Aaliyah observed quietly. Brent's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "Fine. I don't need them anyway. Let's do this." The crowd formed a loose circle as Brent and Aaliyah moved to the center of the cleared area. Jackson tried to hand Brent something surreptitiously, but Mr. Reed caught the movement. "Empty your pockets, both of you," he ordered. "This is fists only." Reluctantly, Brent pulled out a set of brass knuckles similar to those his hired muscle had carried. The crowd murmured disapprovingly as he tossed them aside. Aaliyah simply turned her empty pockets inside out, having nothing to hide. With the preliminaries settled, they faced each other in the makeshift ring. Brent immediately fell into an exaggerated boxing stance that revealed his complete lack of training. Aaliyah remained relaxed, hands loose at her sides, centered and balanced as Grandpa Elijah had taught her. "Ready to learn your place, Salvation Army?" Brent taunted, bouncing on his toes. Aaliyah said nothing, watching him with calm focus. Impatient and agitated, Brent made the first move, a wild, telegraphed right hook that Aaliyah easily stepped away from. He followed with a series of equally predictable punches, each missing its target as she moved economically around him. "Stand still and fight," he demanded, growing frustrated. "I am fighting," she replied. "You're just not seeing it." Her first counter came so quickly that many in the crowd missed it, a sharp jab to Brent's solar plexus as he overextended on another wild swing. He stumbled back, momentarily winded, surprise evident on his face. That surprise turned to anger as he charged forward again, abandoning any pretense of technique in favor of raw aggression. This time, Aaliyah used his momentum against him, sidestepping and guiding his rush with a hand on his back that sent him sprawling onto the dirt. Laughter erupted from the crowd. Brent scrambled to his feet, face red with humiliation. "Lucky move," he spat, brushing dirt from his clothes. "If you say so," Aaliyah replied, still calm, still focused. What followed was less a fight than a demonstration, not of Aaliyah's superior strength, but of her control, timing, and technique. Every time Brent attacked, she countered or evaded, with precise, minimal movements. She never initiated, never overreached, simply let him exhaust himself against her defense. 5 minutes in, Brent was sweating profusely, breathing hard, while Aaliyah had barely broken a sweat. The crowd had fallen mostly silent, witnessing something few had expected. Not a brutal beatdown, but a master class in disciplined fighting. In desperation, Brent resorted to a dirty move, feinting a punch then kicking dirt toward Aaliyah's eyes. She blinked reflexively, momentarily blinded, and he seized the opportunity to tackle her to the ground. They hit the dirt hard, Brent immediately trying to pin her arms. For the first time, Aaliyah found herself in genuine danger, with his greater weight and strength giving him the advantage in close quarters. But this was exactly what Mr. Reed had prepared her for. Drawing on his lessons, she kept her composure, waited for Brent to shift his weight, then executed a perfect hip escape that reversed their positions in one fluid motion. Suddenly it was Brent on his back, with Aaliyah, controlling his right arm in a joint lock that required minimal strength but caused maximum discomfort. He struggled wildly, then froze as she applied just enough pressure to make the message clear. She could break his arm with a simple shift of weight. "Yield," she said quietly. "Screw you," he gasped, though he'd stopped struggling. Aaliyah leaned closer, her voice for him alone. "This is why you'll never beat me, Brent. You fight for your ego. I fight for something real." She released the lock and stood up, stepping back to give him space. For a moment it seemed the confrontation was over as Brent sat up, rubbing his arm. Then, with a roar of frustration, he lunged at her one final time and ran straight into a perfect cross that dropped him onto his back again, dazed but conscious. "Stay down," Aaliyah advised. "It's over." To everyone's surprise, Tyler stepped forward and helped Brent to his feet. "She's right, man. It's done." Brent shrugged him off angrily, looking around at the crowd of witnesses, many with phones that had recorded every moment of his humiliation. His plans had failed, his hired backup had abandoned him, and he'd been soundly defeated in front of half the school. "This isn't over," he said, but the threat rang hollow now. "Actually," a new voice interrupted, "I think it is." Heads turned to see two police officers approaching through the fence gap, followed by Aaliyah Wilson, her expression both determined and sad. "Officers," she said formally. "This is the illegal fighting ring I reported. And that's my brother who organized it and hired those men to assault a fellow student." She pointed to the retreating truck where Pete and his friends were attempting to leave. "What? Layla, what are you doing?" Brent's voice cracked with disbelief. "The right thing." "Finally," she turned to the officers. "I have recordings of him planning everything, including paying those men to attack Aaliyah if she resisted." As the officers moved to intercept the truck and detain Brent for questioning, the crowd began to disperse, sensing that the real show was over. Jackson and Tyler melted away, suddenly eager to distance themselves from their friend. Aaliyah stood quietly, watching as Brent was escorted to a patrol car, his protests falling on deaf ears. She felt no triumph, no vindication, just a strange, peaceful emptiness where her fear and anger had lived for so long. "You good?" Mr. Reed asked, appearing at her side. She nodded. "Yeah, I'm good." "That was some fine fighting," he said with quiet approval. "Clean, controlled, respectful even. I had good teachers." Reed smiled slightly. "What now?" Aaliyah looked around at the abandoned lot, at the retreating spectators, at the police car pulling away with Brent in the back seat. "Now, I go home, help Kyla with her homework, keep moving forward." As they walked toward the street, Tasha fell into step beside them. "The Queens would welcome you any time," she said. "No pressure, but the door's open." "Thanks," Aaliyah replied. "I'll think about it." The afternoon sun was beginning to sink as they reached the sidewalk. Waiting there, leaning against his old sedan, was Grandpa Elijah, a proud smile lighting his weathered face. "Heard you handled yourself well," he said as Aaliyah approached. Here quick. Good news travels fast." He opened the passenger door for her. "Come on. Kyla's waiting at home. Says she made dinner all by herself, though I suspect the microwave did most of the work." Aaliyah smiled, sliding into the car. As they drove away from the abandoned factory lot, she looked back once at the place where everything had changed. Not just for Brent, but for her as well. The story spread through Lincoln High like wildfire. Aaliyah Jefferson, the quiet girl in hand-me-downs, had not only stood up to Brent Wilson but had defeated him using fighting skills no one knew she possessed. By Monday morning, the video had been viewed thousands of times. The underground fight community was buzzing with respectful chatter, and the school hallways parted for Aaliyah in a way they never had before. But the attention didn't change her. She wore the same clothes, carried the same mended backpack, kept the same calm demeanor. The only difference was in her eyes, a quiet confidence that had always been there but was now fully awakened. During lunch, she sat at her usual table, reading her worn paperback. The chair across from her scraped against the floor as someone sat down. Aaliyah looked up, surprised to find Layla Wilson watching her with tentative eyes. "Is this seat taken?" Layla asked belatedly, already seated. "It is now," Aaliyah replied, placing her bookmark and closing her book. "Shouldn't you be sitting with—" "Well, not me," Layla shrugged. "Those aren't my friends. They never were. Just Brent's audience. Speaking of Brent, juvenile detention at least until his hearing. My father's lawyers are working overtime, but the evidence was pretty damning." Layla picked at her salad. "My dad's also suspended. His campaign, the publicity is not great." Aaliyah absorbed this information silently. She felt no joy at Brent's downfall, just relief that he wouldn't be a threat anymore. "I'm sorry," Layla said suddenly, "for not stopping him sooner, for watching all those times and doing nothing." "You did something when it mattered," Aaliyah replied. "That counts for a lot." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Layla spoke again. "Where did you learn to fight like that?" "My grandfather. He runs a boxing gym on 7th Street. Elijah's Pride. I've driven past it." Layla hesitated. "Do you think, would it be weird if I checked it out sometime?" Aaliyah studied her, seeing genuine interest beneath the hesitation. "Not weird at all. Everyone's welcome there." After school, Aaliyah walked to Elijah's Pride as usual, but this time the atmosphere had changed. The normally quiet gym was buzzing with activity, double the regular number of clients, plus several new faces, all working with unusual focus and energy. Elijah sat in his corner chair, watching it all with a satisfied expression. When he spotted Aaliyah, he beckoned her over. "Business is booming," he observed. "Seems your little demonstration has inspired some folks." "I didn't do it for publicity, Grandpa. Course not. You did it for you. And for Kyla." He pointed to the far corner, where Kyla was tentatively practicing jabs on a speed bag, coached patiently by Coach Ramirez. "Your sister signed up this morning. Says she wants to be strong like you." Aaliyah watched Kyla's determined face with a surge of pride and protectiveness. "I didn't want her fighting." "Sometimes fighting chooses you," Elijah replied. "Better, she learns to do it right." As Aaliyah moved through the gym, gathering her cleaning supplies, old members and newcomers alike greeted her with nods of respect or quiet words of admiration. The story had traveled here too, enhanced by Mr. Reed's first-hand account of her disciplined performance. In the supply closet, she found something new, a framed photograph hanging on the wall beside Elijah's old boxing portraits. It showed Aaliyah in the underground ring, hands raised after her victory against Desiree, face glowing with the joy of clean competition. "Hope you don't mind," said a voice behind her. Aaliyah turned to find Mr. Reed leaning in the doorway. "Tasha thought your grandfather might want a copy for the Wall of Champions." "I'm not a champion," Aaliyah protested. "Aren't you?" Reed gestured. "To the gym beyond. Look what you've inspired. That's what champions do. They show others what's possible." Before Aaliyah could respond, the gym door opened and Coach Ramirez entered, accompanied by a serious-looking woman in business attire. "Aaliyah," Ramirez called, "someone I'd like you to meet. This is Margaret Taylor from the State Athletic Commission. She runs the amateur boxing program, including the scholarship division." The woman approached, extending her hand. "Ms. Jefferson, Coach Ramirez has been singing your praises, said you might be interested in our youth development program." I don't compete anymore," Aaliyah stammered, taken aback. "So I've heard, but talents like yours are rare. The program includes college scholarship opportunities for those who qualify. She handed Aaliyah a business card. No pressure, just consider it. We're always looking for young people who understand that fighting is about discipline, not just power. After Margaret left, Ramirez stayed behind. Just think about it, she advised. Could be a path to college you haven't considered. The next morning, news about Brent and his father dominated local headlines. Richard Wilson had announced the suspension of his campaign amid allegations of encouraging his son's bullying behavior and attempting to cover up the hired assault plan. Brent remained in juvenile detention, facing charges that could result in significant community service and mandatory counseling. As Aaliyah walked through the school hallways, she noticed an unexpected change. A new student, a freshman boy wearing clearly second-hand clothes, was being harassed by two upperclassmen near the water fountain. Without hesitation, she changed direction, positioning herself silently beside the younger student. Her presence alone was enough. The bullies faltered mid-taunt, exchanged nervous glances, and quickly moved on. "Thanks," the boy mumbled, clearly embarrassed. "No problem," Aaliyah replied. "I'm Aaliyah. Marcus. I just transferred here last week." "Well, Marcus, want to join me and my sister for lunch later? We usually sit by the east windows." His grateful smile was answer enough. Later that day, as Aaliyah was leaving her final class, Mr. Reed caught up with her in the nearly empty hallway. "Heard you're becoming a guardian angel for the underdog population," he said with a knowing smile. Aaliyah shrugged. "Just trying to be the person I needed when I first got here." Reed nodded approvingly. "That's how change happens. One small action at a time." He glanced around before continuing in a lower voice. "I wanted to let you know, I'm leaving at the end of the semester." "Leaving? Why?" "Time to move on. I've been here long enough. Got a coaching opportunity at a youth center in Philadelphia." He smiled at her surprised expression. "This was never meant to be permanent, just until I found the right student to pass along what I know." "And that was me?" Aaliyah asked, incredulous. "That was you," he confirmed. "The best fighters? They fight for others, not themselves. You already understood that, even when you were afraid of your own power." As spring turned to summer, Lincoln High settled into a new normal. With Brent gone and his influence faded, the social hierarchy shifted, becoming more fluid, less defined by wealth or appearance. Aaliyah continued to wear her hand-me-downs, though now she did so by choice rather than necessity. The gym's increased business had eased some of their financial strain, and Coach Ramirez had helped her secure a position as a junior instructor. That paid better than cleaning tables. On the last day of school, Aaliyah cleaned out her locker, sorting books and papers accumulated over the year. A familiar voice interrupted her task. "Got plans for the summer?" Layla asked, leaning against the adjacent locker. "Working at the gym mostly. Maybe some amateur competitions if Grandpa thinks I'm ready." Layla nodded. "I'm volunteering at a community center downtown, helping kids with summer reading programs." She paused. "My dad's moving out. Parents are separating while he deals with the campaign fallout." "I'm sorry," Aaliyah said, meaning it. "Don't be. It's been a long time coming." Layla hesitated, then plunged ahead. "Would you want to grab coffee sometime? No pressure, just, I'd like us to be friends. Real ones." "I'd like that," Aaliyah replied with a genuine smile. As Aaliyah walked home that afternoon, Kyla chattering excitedly beside her about summer plans and boxing lessons, she reflected on how much had changed in a few short months. The clothes on her back were still secondhand, still slightly too large, but they felt different now. Not like a source of shame, but like a reminder of everything she'd overcome. Outside Elijah's pride, they paused to watch a group of new young fighters filing in for afternoon lessons. Among them was Marcus, the new kid Aaliyah had defended, now finding his own strength in the same place she had. Sometimes life hands you scraps, Aaliyah thought, watching the diverse group of kids, some in expensive gear, others in makeshift outfits, learning to respect each other in the ring. Doesn't mean you can't stitch up something powerful. Was it ever about the clothes on her back, or the strength she carried within? Aaliyah Jefferson taught us that true power isn't in what we wear, but in how we rise when others try to keep us down. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of underdogs finding their power in unexpected ways.